Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Pumped up on Mars, juice, and ketamine.
He is the Thomas Edison plus of our age.
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
I would say 98% really appreciate what he does, but those 2% that are nasty, they are out there in full force.
We are meant for great things in the United States of America, and Elon reminds us of that.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, June 17th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. Now, we start this week's show with the latest on the Musk-Trump drama. The detente that was just emerging when we last recorded is taking hold. And you know, it feels like it's just a matter of time before Musk and little X will be back in the Oval Office sparring with reporters and playing on the floor. I'm sitting here with Elon Inc. stalwart Max Chafkin, who's feeling, I suspect, a little vindicated, to go over the latest there. Max, welcome to you, sir.
David, I told you so.
Okay. You all week, you've been prepping that line. Max will also give us an update on the much-anticipated launch of Tesla's Robotaxi. Now, you'll remember it was slated for last week. We were all so excited. And then it was postponed to this week as Musk and co. scrambled to get it ready. Not an auspicious beginning. And then over at XAI, Musk is raising a ton of money, even more than we had previously reported. But XAI is also burning through a lot of money, just reams and reams of it in billion-dollar clips. And ace Bloomberg credit markets reporter Carmen Arroyo will join us later to tell us all about that. But Max, Elon and Donald are back. So much so that, my God, did I actually hear or read an apology come out of Elon Musk's mouth? Did this happen?
Elon,
I didn't know he did that.
I regret some of my posts about President at Real Donald Trump last week. They went too far. He said on June 11th, and you're right, an unusual apology, although he has.
I mean, I guess maybe he could say, well, it wasn't really an apology. If you regret something, are you apologizing?
It's not quite a, full-on apology, but it's pretty darn close. And I think I said this last week. That is what it's going to take. And I don't know that this...
Groveling.
Yeah. I mean, he accused Trump of unspeakable crimes without basis, suggested he should be impeached. He said a lot of, excuse my French, really bad shit. And so he's going to have to do some of this if he wants to get back into Trump's good graces.
And do we believe it is working? It looks like Trump on his end continues to also move a bit towards Musk, like, hey, maybe this is going to be okay?
Trump's just not really saying anything beyond, they've talked. And I think last week we went over that answer that Trump gave when he was asked about Elon Musk. I mean, it's basically been pretty quiet between the two of them, which honestly feels like progress. They're not feuding in public. There have also been, I'd say, a couple of little things that you could interpret as sort of bullish signs for the Elon-Trump relationship.
Such as? Well,
I believe it was last week, June 13th.
Yeah.
Bloomberg reported on a kind of modest change that NHTSA, that's the highway regulator that we mentioned last week, is making for driverless car companies. Essentially, again, this is very much a small procedural thing.
Yeah, it helps Tesla. And I also suppose just, directionally, it certainly helps. And it's probably at a moment when that relationship appeared as rocky as it did, it certainly looks like a good sign.
So this is a really small change.
Is it? But when I read the headline, I was like, wow, this is big.
Okay, So for cars that do not have pedals or steering wheel, automakers have to seek an exemption from NHTSA. That's the highway regulator that I mentioned, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's part of the Department of Transportation. It's an agency that Elon Musk has tangled with over the years. NHTSA said they're going to streamline this process so that the approval decisions are made within months rather than years. So, I don't know. I guess that's good, but it's not an approval. It's just a suggestion that they will make decisions about approval or lack of approval more quickly than they've been making them before. It's also one that doesn't really have bearing on this robotaxi launch that we're talking about in Austin, because those cars, of course, do have pedals and steering wheels.
They do.
They're just normal cars. So I'm not 100% sure that these regulations that NHTSA is talking about are even related to what Elon Musk is doing. Obviously, Elon Musk is doing this launch without this NHTSA approval. So again, I think it's like a positive sign in the sense that they're doing this in some sense in public. The Trump administration has to know that this will be interpreted as a sort of olive branch to Elon Musk. And so I think that's how we should interpret it as well.
Yeah, that is how.
But it's a small olive branch.
I got
it's
it.
not a.
I got it.
Yeah.
You keep saying that. I got it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that Robotaxi launch in a second. But before we do, I know that you've been out there working on a little new something you've got. Because, given how Musk is coming rushing back to Trump's arms, and you were trying to create like a little bit of an acronym, a little bit of thing. Like, what do we call this?
All right, hang on. Just indulge me for a second here, David, because
Go.
As we've talked about, a couple weeks ago, I wrote a piece saying, don't bet on the Elon Musk-Trump breakup. It looked really smart for a day.
And then we all laughed at you.
Then we laughed at me. And
laughed.
And now I am, once again, my take, my only regret is not sticking.
The king. You're the king again.
Not sticking to my take when Elon was hurling insults and it seemed like they were never going to speak again.
That was a moment of weakness on your part.
Definitely. But I do think there's a lesson here. And I've been, of course, following a lot of the discussion, as you have, on Wall Street and among investors about how to think about Trump's bellicose language on trade. You, David, are probably familiar with the TACO acronym that has been thrown around a lot. It stands for Trump always chickens out. This is the idea that if Trump says, I'm going to put 150% tariffs on China, Wall Street traders kind of discount that because they think, hey, he's never going to do it. So I think we need one for Musk and Trump.
Right.
And I propose MAMUWT.
MAMUWT.
MAMUWT. Yeah. It stands for Musk always makes up with Trump. MAMUWT.
MAMUWT. So
that's all you need to know.
I kind of like
it. I think it might take off the same way that taco has taken off.
I mean, taco, there's a simplicity to taco, which is fun. And by the way, tacos are also delicious. MAMUWT. First of all, I don't even know that you're if you're really spelling it MAMUWT. I don't know that you're pronouncing it correctly.
How should we pronounce it?
I think it should be like that brand of shoe, that hiking gear. It just should be like MAMUWT.
Oh,
like the W is essentially silent.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. MAMUWT.
But I say, if you're going to go this route and go like all weird and incomprehensible, just keep on going. We need wackier, wilder, more incomprehensible and longer. Maybe we go to maybe we have people send ideas to the mailbag.
Yeah. Listeners, let us know if you like MAMUWT or MAMUWT or however you want to pronounce it. And also, if you've got a better acronym, maybe one that ideally is a word, maybe one that has the correct amount of vowels.
There's no way it's pronounced MAMUWT. It just can't be.
MAMUWT. Give us a shout, ElonInc@Bloomberg.net. Tell us what you think the acronym should be, and really how you're thinking about this Trump-Musk relationship these days.
The acronym aside, the conceit and the pronunciation of the acronym aside, the conceit is a good one. It seems like Musk has certainly come to appreciate that as much as Trump has to lose in a breakup, Elon Musk has a hell of a lot more to lose. And so hence Musk always makes up with Trump. There we are.
Yeah, and I mentioned the self-driving rules. There are other signs that Trump is sort of not done extracting punishment or that there won't be repercussions for Elon Musk. Reuters reported the day after the apology that this Golden Dome project that Trump has been talking about.
Remind us, what is it?
Essentially a missile shield similar to the Iron Dome that Israel has. Trump wants to build one here.
Of course, it has to be gold.
In the U.S., of course, gold. There had been a lot of reporting suggesting that SpaceX would be a major player in that. Reuters reporting on the 12th that the Department of Defense was looking to change the architecture of the Golden Dome, essentially in a way that would cut out SpaceX. So they had been imagining this sort of satellite array. That's obviously a great job for Elon Musk. And they were looking at other solutions. And there's a suggestion in the story that the feud between Trump and Musk might open the door for maybe opponents of this plan to suggest their own ideas. So there might be more of a competition for which contractors are going to get this contract, if it indeed happens, which, of course, they haven't appropriated the money yet.
And I'm sorry, so again, what kind of money are we talking about here? This would be an incredibly rich project with incredibly large concessions.
I mean, billions of dollars, certainly. I think the overall amount of money appropriated for this there's an item in the big beautiful bill. Off the top of my head, I think it's $25 billion.
Oh, so it's in there.
Well, yeah, but it's not clear that will survive the Senate thing. Reuters mentions that defense experts think that the overall cost of this thing will be more like $175 billion once it's done and dusted. So that would just be the beginning of the Golden Dome project.
But that's before Doge goes through. When Doge is done, it's going to be down to about a couple $2 billion. But
in any case, it's sort of a suggestion that there would be a competition and that SpaceX wouldn't necessarily have a leg up in that competition.
Yeah. So in other words, Elon, if you want part of the Golden Dome project, MAMUWT.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Robotaxi. We were supposed to get it, Max, the soft launch, as we had discussed last week. It was supposed to come Thursday or Friday last week, and then at some point we got a heads up. No. Not quite ready. What's going on?
I feel like we need another acronym that's like MADRA. Musk always delays robotaxi announcements.
If we come up with enough of these things, we'll just do the entire show in acronyms.
Because
we won't have to say other words.
We talked last week about the prospect that there would be a robotaxi announcement as early as the end of last week. That's what we had heard from people inside of Tesla, we being Bloomberg. Musk put out a tweet essentially saying they're aiming for the 22nd of June, which is, I believe it's Sunday.
So not only is the launch itself a soft launch, but the date itself is
it was a little fuzzy,
little squishy.
Yeah. And then that he thought what was definitely going to happen was that they would celebrate his birthday, which is the 28th.
The military parade.
By driving a robotaxi from the factory to a customer's home. Now,
that's a good set. Will there be a cake? I mean, then you get to this.
I am not holding my breath for any of this, although I feel like the factory stunt, that's one that feels like more plausible that they could actually pull off. Musk has been promising these robotaxi launches for years. And so it definitely feels like Tesla is more intent on actually doing this, actually having something. And we've heard details, 10 cars in Austin. We've seen some cars even driving around. But I mean, honestly, who knows? And so I would not be surprised if there's something that happens, something that could be plausibly called a robotaxi launch as soon as Sunday. It's not going to be very big. I don't think regular people are going to be able to get in these robotaxis. I think it's going to be like basically pretty minimal, but allowing Elon Musk to claim some sort of win. And that could be, again, giving some Tesla insiders or something a ride in a quote-unquote driverless car, or even just driving one of these cars to one customer's home. So we're going to see something, but the date just keeps moving, and at this point, I'm not totally sure when we're going to see it.
Okay, now we are joined by Ace, Bloomberg Credit Markets reporter Carmen Arroyo. Carmen, fantastic to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much, David.
So, Carmen, you have a great scoop out today, you and Jill Shah, on XAI and all the money it's raising and all the money it's spending at the same time. Tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So XAI is out in the market right now trying to basically raise a little bit under 10 billion, so 9.3 billion.
Yeah, so to be clear, we already knew, I believe we had previously reported that they were seeking to raise 5
billion of debt. So what's new is that they're raising also equity as part of the same fundraising process.
So
basically.
5 billion debt and 4.3 billion in equity.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
And how's it going?
I mean, the commitments on the debt are due today, so we'll know probably at the end of the day how the debt process is going. But investors...
So, Max, sorry to interrupt, but this is... I'm already going back to MAMUWT. You know? Right. You need to sell a lot of debt. You need to sell a lot of equity. You need to show investors you're in the good graces of Donald Trump. MAMUWT, I think you missed MAMUWT, Carmen. MAMUWT is...
Musk always makes up with Trump.
Oh, okay.
See how clever that is?
Yeah,
right?
not bad.
We're going to make it happen.
We're gonna make
you
it happen.
could
It's gonna
spread it
take
around
off.
to your sources.
Right?
Who might help.
But if you're going to be raising $9.3 billion, you can't be Splitsville with Donald Trump, I wouldn't think. But anyway, so the bids on the debt are due today. The books are supposed to close today, and so we should have that should be locked down by the end of the day.
Yeah, the commitments should be out today, yeah.
Okay. And then on the equity side, any sense of how it's going?
Apparently what they've disclosed is basically that they're working on the $4.3 billion fundraise, and they're close to being finalized.
And this isn't just like money that Musk himself is
We don't know
up.
where the source of the funds is, but it's been put together quick from what we know. So...
Okay, so that's what they're bringing in, and what is going out?
Yeah, so they have an incredibly expensive program like most AI companies do. Just this year, they expect to invest $10 billion with capital expenditures. So basically all they're raising, they're going to be spending. And so when you look at some of the figures, like a little bit more in depth, like the levered cash flow, which is basically what's left once you pay everything else, they have a negative $13 billion. So they're really not being profitable right now.
No. I mean, wait a minute. So they're going to burn through more than $1 billion each and every month this year.
Yeah, I mean, building data centers and training AI models is expensive.
Max.
I mean, so in some ways, like Carmen is saying, this is not hugely surprising because...
This is a day of vindication for you, Max, today, because not only on the Musk-Trump thing, but also you have
I've been talking
pounding
about
the
how
table,
expensive this stuff
pounding the table about how stupidly expensive it is to build out AI.
I mean, the thing that jumps out at you in this story is not so much the cost, but the fact that there's like no revenue. No revenue coming in.
Is that right?
Or
Zero
very
revenue?
There's some revenue coming in.
Like
they have
50 cents or like what?
No, for this year they project like $500 million of revenue.
Substantially less than
what
OpenAI.
$500 million comes in, and again, how much goes out in expenses?
Just on CapEx, more than $10 billion.
I don't know. Okay.
So, look, there are a lot of people who really believe that AI is this huge game changer. On the other hand, this space in particular is very capital intensive. It's also very competitive. I do wonder, like, Carmen, the story kind of hints at signs that some investors are approaching this deal with skepticism, that they're not running into this deal the way we might expect investors to run into a normal Elon Musk deal.
Well, the thing is, like, credit investors are not used to this type of deal. Like, they're used to...
Right, because there's no income flow. There's no stream of cash.
Exactly. This is a startup, right? And that usually doesn't go to the corporate credit debt markets like that usually. And so
It would either be on the equity side or if it were on the debt side, how would it be done?
Could be venture debt. This is not that usual. We don't see this. The fundraisers we've seen on data centers are mostly at the project level.
Now, is he able to do this because they're actually building this like gigantic physical data center with all these expensive GPUs that have
intrinsic value?
Yeah.
I think it's mainly like you're betting on AI, and basically you're betting on Musk. And the equity raise just came out this week, which is also helping investors be more comfortable with the debt raise because they know that someone's going to be backing it in some sense.
But it's true. It's not super intuitive that if you're betting on AI, that you'd want to do it through the debt side, right? I mean, if you're betting on AI, you're hoping to hit a crazy home run, right? And come up with something that produces a return of 500, 1,000%. Why do you want to be clipping coupons at 11 or 12%? What are the coupons on this debt, by the way?
I think
the interest rate.
12%, I believe.
I would think an investor gravitates to that space thinking that they're going to mint 1,000% return, not that they're going to clip 11% interest rates a year.
Well, if you look at just the equity story for XAI, like in end of 2024 it was worth around $50 billion. Now, end of March, it was worth $80 billion, and now they've raised more equity. So the equity story is just like an upward trajectory. That's usually not the same for the debt. You just expect to get paid. So the upside is not usually that intuitive.
What is that equity story based on?
Just fundraisers.
I mean, it's just like Elon Musk.
What's wrong with Grok, man? Grok's the man.
But I mean, it's basically just Elon decided that it's now worth twice.
Oh, wait
as
a
much.
minute. No. But some sort of transaction or two or three took place that when you extrapolate it out, it came up with $50 billion whenever it was that first one, and it
So
spits out $80 billion now, right? I mean, it's not, Max is being very cynical and saying it's $80 billion now because Musk says it is. But no, presumably actual transactions happened at that valuation.
Well, when you raise new equity, you basically put a new valuation to it.
And somebody bought it, right?
Well, presumably.
Presumably. I'm curious how the merger of X and XAI plays into this fundraising. And I still don't totally understand what it means for either company. And how are the investors thinking about the fact that they also own this sort of struggling social network?
So that's kind of interesting because debt investors bought a lot of the X debt and they were comfortable with it.
That was how much, and that was right back when Musk bought Twitter, a chunk of that was financed with debt. How much was it in the end?
It was $12 billion.
Okay.
So basically Morgan Stanley and the other banks sold everything earlier this year. And the debt was trading close to 100, right? Close to par. So
in the end, but it had fallen.
It's fallen a little bit, yeah.
And it had fallen initially right after the deal went through. It had fallen all the way down to in the 60s, 60 some odd cents on the dollar. Then it came all the way when Trump was elected and Musk and Trump became buddies. It came all the way back to around par. But yeah, so X and XAI, how are investors, as Max was asking, how are they thinking about it?
So what's kind of interesting is that if you own the X debt, right, you still have a lien on XAI, but if you own XAI debt, you don't have that lien on X. They don't have that cross-collateralization.
A lien on X, what does a lien on X get you?
I mean, at least you have more financials for the company. You have a longer history.
Yes. Max, do you want a lien on X or XAI? He doesn't want to lean on either. I will just say this, $1 billion a month in terms of what they're blowing through. Again, I don't know anything about anything, but man, it seems like an awful lot of money. And is this a window into how much all of these AI companies are pissing through?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, I do think OpenAI is different because OpenAI has a real business. OpenAI built this very successful consumer product that they've managed to convince a lot of people and a lot of businesses to pay money for. And so they are, again, their revenue projections, I think, should be met with some skepticism as well, because we're in the middle of this kind of very frothy period. But they're projecting, Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, 12 billion, 13 billion a year in annual revenue, right? Or I mean, they're projecting in the billions of annual revenue in the near term. And I think they're already pulling in billions in revenue today. But I do think this is just what it costs. And I think it helps us understand, Musk put out that tweet a couple weeks ago before the fight with Trump, where he said he needs to be super focused on his company. He needs to sleep on the floor. And he mentioned a bunch of different companies. He mentioned Tesla, of course, where the robotaxi is happening. He mentioned Starship, which is SpaceX's, big rocket that had just experienced a launch failure. And he mentioned XAI. And I think in certain ways, there are crises going on at every single one of those companies. Now, XAI is different because there is also this pot of gold that really seems like it could be there in the near term.
Yeah, but why do you say there's a crisis going on at XAI?
Because they're burning $12, $13 billion
you guys just told me that's just the way these things happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a crisis. I think it's how the business works. If you look at the other AI companies, they're burning similar money.
There's just no business yet. He's going to need to raise another $12 billion next year. The implication of this story is that he's going to have to go to the capital markets very quickly again. Now,
well, that's a good question. Wait a minute. So, Carmen, is there any sense in the reporting you have that even though they're producing essentially some iteration of zero revenue this year, that in 2026 and 2027, in other words, in the not so distant future, those income streams will start to change fairly quickly?
Yeah, basically their projections is that by 2027, they're going to be profitable.
See that, Max?
Okay. Can't wait. I just am thinking about how you have this company, which is an increasingly large chunk of Elon's kind of empire, and you have Tesla,
I mean, it really
which
is
entirely dependent on this robotaxi story. This is a guy who's really leveraged in one direction, which is that AI playing out the way that bulls hope and happening very, 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 very quickly. And anything short of that is going to be a real problem for Elon Musk. It's going to be a problem for Tesla. It's going to be a problem for X.
No, that's true.
No, I was going to say, like, something interesting on this XAI-X relationship that I thought was interesting is that basically XAI can use the X as a library to train Grok, which is something that maybe other AI companies don't have, like that amount of like information there.
The thing is, they were doing it already. It's just like an accounting change, really. Mm-hmm. But because, of course, Elon Musk, controlling both companies, could just decide to give X's data to Grok, which it seemed like he was already doing. But it does seem like a real point of differentiation for XAI and for Grok that it can be trained on this like up to the minute data. I do think if you've been using X lately, especially over the last year, you may have questions about just how reliable that data is. I mean, it's gotten less good at sort of giving the kind of up to the minute news that it once did. It's also full of AI slop, including a lot of Grok slop. And you don't really want, like if you know anything about...
Like what?
So like the point is more like, it's like making a tape of a tape. You don't want to train an AI algorithm on AI outputs. And because if that happens, it magnifies the problems. You're like hallucinating on top of hallucinations. It's like an
echo chamber.
Exactly. And so my assumption is they're trying to filter out those Grok responses, and they're trying to like find ways so that they're not training.
So Grok is basically like in a cave shouting at himself, and then he...
That's the risk.
That's kind of funny.
To be clear, that is
Get
a risk.
Grok out of the cave.
That's a risk for OpenAI as well, because you're seeing, OpenAI and these other large language models train on the open web. If you've been on the open web lately, you're noticing there's a lot of OpenAI.
I haven't been on X, but I've been on the open.
Yeah, there's a lot of AI slop, which that's a word I'm using to describe kind of.
So you're telling me I shouldn't believe what the robot tells me?
Yeah, you got to be careful with large language
Carmen,
algorithms.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Taking this into account.
Carmen, keep breaking news. And when you have another really good scoop, we'll have you back on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Max, thanks as always.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong and edited by Anna Masarakis. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact checks. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Noonan is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks, as always, to our supporters Joel Weber and Brad Stone. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.